The only way to build a brand today is really having omni-channel distribution. Other channels that are interesting and actually have brought us growth where we didn't think are a lot of these marketplaces. For example, there's a lot of gifting platforms out there that people may not know of, right? These corporations, large corporations all around the country will use gifting platforms. Once I realized that this is something that works extremely well in spa, I said to myself, who are the biggest spas? Who has the biggest reach? Let me start from there and go find the 5, 10 big partners, create relationships because they take a while. So start building relationships, and some is right time, right place, and others it's a fit or it's not a fit for their strategy. So it was just about approaching them.
Welcome to the DTC Insider podcast, where online business owners come to find actionable tips and tactics to grow their businesses. Now, here's your host, Brian Roisentul.
Hey, welcome to another episode. I'm Brian Roisentul, your host, and today I'm super excited to interview Karina Moises. She's a co-founder and CEO of Beautology Lab. Karina's journey with Beautology Lab is all about strategic growth and making impactful partnerships while bootstrapping her brand. From a successful partnership with Ipsy in their second year, bringing in almost $500K with just one product, to collaborating with Equinox, Karina has been building momentum. We'll dive into her customer acquisition strategies, retention efforts, and her plans for 2025. Hey, Karina, thanks for being on the show. Hola.
Hi, Brian. Hola. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you too. Why don't we start, doing, a little bit of a recap of what worked for you in 2024. 2024, if we put it in context for the audience, was a little bit something. It was a little something because we had like really quickly the evolution of e-commerce in the last few years. Pre-pandemic, then we had the pandemic, the boom of e-commerce in 2020, then in 2021 it continued a little bit, but a little bit, slower than 2022. Brands started to sweat and say, hey, probably this is not the good old days. Things that used to be working are not anymore. In 2023, at least myself, I started to hear a lot the word profitability, bottom line, brand. It's like brands were realizing that it was not only about the top line revenue. And 2024, probably with that being said, brands were aware of that already and wanted to change, gears and change everything to grow again. And grow the bottom line, the profitability. But of course, it was an election year. So as always, everything is complicated in life. But yeah, so what was 2024 like for you?
So you're right. 2024 was complicated with different variables and factors, but at the same time, every year brings its challenges, right? So it's about pivoting, like you said, understanding what's not working and moving on quickly, and then doing more of that. For us, 2024 was really about strategic partnerships. Being bootstrapped, having a small team, you can't do everything. So you really have to pick and choose what makes most sense, what's going to drive awareness and growth for the brand. So how do we make an impact with minimal resources? And that's really been our strategy since we launched, but really more and more, so that we continue hitting the milestones that we're hitting, doubling and quadrupling our revenue, so that we can now grow, hire more people, and then have the resources to do more. For 2024, I can say what did not work was the events and trade shows, or just, general out of home shows that we do for awareness that don't really create a ton of impact. And I'm not saying that it doesn't create some impact, but when you're a small brand, if something doesn't create enough impact, you can't afford to spend the time, energy, and money doing it. So we got really good about not spending time and money and energy on those smaller events that really don't drive too much awareness and impact for us. And the things that did work were the strategic partnerships that we know are going to create a bigger, have more noise. So, for example, you mentioned Equinox. We partnered with them late 2023. So I would say that we really came into fruition with them last year. They are obviously a huge brand. They open up a lot of doors for us. They are allowing us to grow as a brand with them in their spas and in their retail. And they're a microphone for us. So when someone sees us at an Equinox spa, they already know the brand.
Yeah.
So we have a few other partnerships like that I'm sure we'll talk about later, but those are the things that worked and didn't work this year.
Yeah, so I have a lot of questions already. So thank you for those insights. So for the partnerships, for those in the audience that are looking to build in partnerships in 2025, could you please tell them more or less your process to about how you approached you know Equinox and I guess that the other ones that we are going to discuss later. What was the process, if you remember, of course?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, internal, the process starts with understanding where your brand fits best, because that's how then you can identify the partners that do make sense for you. Once you identify them, now it's about, how do I get to them? How do I open up the conversation, build a relationship, pitch my product and my brand, and then you go from there. So with Equinox, it was definitely a knowing that we are very much a spa brand as we are a direct to consumer brand. Why? Because we fit within services. Our tools and topicals have a great place within med spas, in services, right? Where estheticians can utilize these techniques, these holistic products, whether it be an oil, a tool, in their services to create awareness and create an experience. And then we also sit within, D2C as a direct to consumer brand. Our products are at home products, daily rituals, etc. So once I realized that this is something that works extremely well in spa, I I said to myself, who are the biggest spas? Who has the biggest reach? Let me start from there and go almost, find the 5, 10 big partners, create relationships, because they take a while. The bigger you are, the more red tape,
Yeah.
the more processes. So, start building relationships, and some are going to, some is right time, right place, and others it's a fit or it's not a fit for their strategy. So it was just about approaching them. With Equinox, I believe that I met the spa director and the person that buys for all of their spas in the US and outside of the US as well. It's some event or something. And then I just started building a relationship. They loved our products. It took a while to bring us in, but then they were finally ready. So that would be the process with like the bigger spa, hotels, etc., partners. And then also distributors is another really great way to approach partnerships, because these distributors have already opened all the doors that you can imagine for. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask you a quick question. From the 100% of your revenue, if we needed to have, let's say, a cake chart,
Mm.
what percentage comes from DDC? What percentage from, let's say, you know, these partnerships, and what percentage from other distributors or some other channels you might have as well?
Yeah. Yeah. So channels is an interesting and a great question, because the only way to build a brand today is really having omni-channel distribution, right? People can find you anywhere. So I would say overall, we're pretty split 50-50, wholesale and D2C. It varies by months though, right? So
Yeah.
some months are going to be a little heavier on the, wholesale side, meaning these partnerships and these retailers or these spas, and then others are heavier on D2C, being, a seasonal industry that we're in. Other channels that are interesting and actually have brought us growth where we didn't think are a lot of these marketplaces. For example, there's a lot of gifting platforms out there that people may not know of, right? These corporations, large corporations all around the country, will use gifting platforms for their, let's say, corporate gifts, holiday gifts, because it becomes an easier way to distribute these gifts that they want
Yeah.
to give to their employees or partners or clients or whatever. What's interesting is that it becomes a really easy back end connection that ties right back into our Shopify. once a sale comes in through one of those gifting platforms, we fulfill it like if it was a normal
Yeah.
Shopify D2C order. And obviously there's a rev share, but it's like a no-brainer channel for us. So we've done a few of those partnerships this year, have been really profitable.
Nice. So you said 50-50, like wholesale and DTC, but from the 50%, the wholesale 50% part, how much would you say that comes from, partnerships, and how much from these gifting platforms where,
From these
others?
marketplaces.
Yeah.
The marketplaces are still smaller. I would say that, we're talking about 10% there, because there's a lot of products on these gifting platforms, but they're growing for sure. The rest would be, I would say, about 30. If we're talking, 50%, we've taken out, 10%. I would say half and half. Like 20% of that, half of the pie is these partnerships that are large partnerships. The other 20% comes from um, smaller partnerships, smaller med spas, retailers that do good volume, that have been maybe purchasing us for years or find us on, you know, wholesale platforms like Fair and Bulletin.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot of it is our work and the partnerships that we've forged, and others are just, people that come through these platforms.
Yeah. And what about your partnership with Ipsy? I know you started in, correct me if I'm wrong, in year two. It was a huge milestone for the company. Is that
Yes.
correct?
That is correct. Year two, I actually met one of the co-founders of Ipsy at an event in San Francisco. I'm a sales and business development person from my corporate days, so that's my unique skill set. And I was able to connect with her, build a relationship with her. She put me in touch with her team, and sure enough, they wanted some of our products in their boxes. So we did do a big deal with them year two. It was the biggest order we had received, obviously, at that point. So it really allowed us to become profitable in year two, which was really great. And then we've been profitable ever since and growing. Yeah, it's a partnership that we continue to work with. We're also working with FabFitFun, which is another one of those great subscription boxes here in the US. And they are wonderful partners because they allow you to get your product out there, right? And create awareness. When we talk about acquiring customers, it's a wonderful way to acquire customers. So
Yeah.
it's a great partnership.
Yeah. So you mentioned Ipsy, you mentioned Equinox. Both of them, you met them at events. So
Mm.
events did something good for you in 2023 at least, or
Yeah.
the year before, right? So what do you think that changed in 2024 that wasn't a good year for you at events?
So you're right. If we're looking at events as a way to network and meet, these partners that become, partnerships afterwards, then it's always a win-win. And these things happen later, right? So you have to look at it
Yes.
as like a long-term investment. I think what doesn't work in the short term is probably maybe ROI.
Yeah.
For example, you're expecting to open orders at these shows or create immediate partnerships with hotels and spas. A lot of times that doesn't happen because, there's only so much product that a spa can bring in. And it has to be the right time. They have to have budget for it. There's a lot of moving parts.
Yep.
So immediate ROI for these shows is not the way to look at it, but long term definitely is.
Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to ask about the challenges you might have faced, if any, while growing the business as a bootstrap company. Because when we started the conversation, we covered that the evolution of e-commerce in the last few years, and that many brands didn't know what bottom line meant,
Mm.
or profitability. Correct me if I'm wrong. I guess that as a bootstrapped company, you do know what that means because every penny counts, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think that, remind me again where you want me to go
Yeah,
with this, because I can go in.
if there were any challenges as you were growing
Yeah.
the business, before, bumping into these or building these partnerships with Ipsy and Equinox, what challenges have you faced while growing the business as a bootstrap company? I'm asking that because in the audience, again, we have, all kind of brands and entrepreneurs, and also entrepreneurs to be, some in the early stages, some even before the day, let's say zero, before building the actual company, like thinking about doing that, taking the leap. And then we
Mhm.
have some more established businesses. For the first 2 tiers, those thinking about starting a company or those in the early stages, probably they are thinking about whether to raise money or not, even though it's a tough context for that. Or so I heard, from many entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
What challenges have you faced as a bootstrap company?
So when you're talking about bootstrapped, obviously capital is where you're strapped, right? That's the point of bootstrapping. You're strapped for capital because you haven't raised money. So you're really working with either money that you're bringing to the table or money that you're generating. So obviously in the beginning, I put money on the table. A lot of it was just savings from my, corporate career and corporate life. And then it really became about how do we generate money, because I wasn't at a point that I wanted to raise money. I still was really trying to hone in on what this brand was going to be, represent, which is, very important piece of going and raising money is where are you? Where do you fit? What's your value proposition? So the challenges are that you are working with less. You are doing most things on your own until you start generating money and you can hire some people. So for a long time, I was doing everything from the social media, not great, not a great skill set of mine, to everything, sales and accounting, product development, logistics, fulfilling. I mean, everything, you name it. So
Yeah,
as time has gone by, we're generating more cash flow. I've been able to give away the social media piece, the digital marketing piece, which is wonderful because that's not my expertise. I have kept the sales. That is where I thrive. So sales, overseeing marketing, of course, product development. But when you talk about, challenges, also when you're bootstrapped, you're growing slower than you probably want to. It doesn't mean that growing slow isn't a good thing in a way, right? You do growing fast sometimes is not helpful because you can burn out really quickly or not understand your product market fit and put a lot of money into something that doesn't work. So fortunately, when you become scrappy and you have to grow slowly, you learn how to do things better and you find opportunities where maybe you didn't think there were opportunities. You make more from what you have because you have to, right? That is a challenge and also a blessing. But, once you start getting into later stages where you need more products and you need to, invest money into actually developing more tangible products to have more offerings, then you start to move in that direction. So, it's a balance. It's a chicken and an egg, I think.
I know. If you had to start over, what would you do?
Oh gosh, that's such a good question. And people have asked me that since the beginning for a lot of years I didn't know what to say and now I know what to say immediately. I would raise money from the
Why?
get-go because when I look at the market and the industry today, I'm in consumer product goods, but even if you're not in consumer product goods, it's easier sometimes from my experience, from what I observe, to raise money off of an idea, a really good idea, clearly, a thought
Yeah,
out plan, etc., than being in the market, having years under your belt, having potentially highs and lows, whether you're profitable or not. But people are looking at your numbers more with a lens, and they're going to be more judgmental because you've actually shown a track record. So that track record may be great, but if there's been variability, then I think it just makes it harder to raise money. So
yeah,
I would do the opposite. I would know exactly what I want to do from the beginning and raise money from
yeah.
then.
So I'm no expert in this subject matter, but from what I heard from podcast guests, clients, everything comes with its ups and downs. There's nothing perfect. Raising money, yes, you have the money to spending whatever you want, but then you're forced to do things at
Mm,
a pace that is not the one you would want, or to do things, I don't know, release products earlier and less tested than you wanted, or do things that probably you wouldn't want to do because you have some other stakeholders and you need to do not their bidding, but you need to
Yeah.
probably reach an
Go
agreement. And
go with their track. Yeah.
so it's depending on what you want to do. I think clearly it looks like an easier path, at least from a peace of mind perspective, because you have the money to operate and to grow. But then I think I have raised money in the past. It was more friends and family than a
Mm.
VC, but some of them were VCs, but they did it in an independent way. I felt a lot of pressure. We had a lot of meetings for 2 3 years, and we really felt the hurry to build something at a faster pace. And so I can totally relate to that, but I haven't raised money in the DTC space, let's say. But yeah, definitely it's each one of us needs to choose their own path. But
And they're both going to have their pros and their cons, like you said. So I'm sure if I would have raised money from the beginning, I would have felt the pressure that you're talking about, because I know it's there. Well, I've definitely I'm someone that I don't regret the things that I've done or not done. I just learn from them and I move on.
yeah,
And then I do things either differently or the
yeah,
same if they've worked.
what
So,
what I can say definitely is that not raising money makes you probably more scrappy. You need to wear
yes.
1,000 hats because you don't have money to. Otherwise, you need to be super disciplined to not spend the money that you
Yep.
were given. If you can spend it, but you don't want to, and people say, "Well, you have the money, go quickly," and
Yep.
probably it's like so. These founders, for example, we have given many examples in different episodes of founders trying to, for example, to sell their products offline. They went to Central Park or some other locations with a sign saying "Ask us about our products" and whatever. So people do all kind of stuff when they need to be scrappy and they need to avoid jumping stages to avoid a catastrophe. That's probably the problem I see from my end when I talk to people that raised money and probably regret not doing some things right. So the thing I see is that they skip steps, they skip
Mm,
phases. So they have the money, they
you're
validate
right.
product market fit through some apps, and that's it, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
those who don't have money probably want to make sure that they're not going to spend years of their life and a lot of their savings on something that people don't want, right? So
It
yeah,
definitely makes you a better entrepreneur, like you said, a scrappier entrepreneur. You learn more. You then later, I can say, when I am ready to raise money, which is likely next year, you know what to do with it, because you've gone all these years
yes,
having to be really careful about where you spend your money. So you're almost going to take that same approach when you have the money, because you've learned what it's like not to.
exactly. Yeah, I can totally agree. There are different stages in an entrepreneur's life or journey. So when you're starting out, it's one thing, but now you have a few years under your belt, and raising money
Hmm.
would mean a different thing to you.
Yeah.
So now I wanted to discuss, growing through, acquisition. Customer acquisition means yes, retention is really important. LTV or lifetime value is super important, but that means nothing if you don't acquire new customers, right? So how do you approach customer acquisition? What are the main channels you leverage for that?
So customer acquisition is everything, right? When you're a product brand, we obviously use Meta. It's a channel that we invest a lot in. It's a channel that works for us in terms of ROAS, right? Return on ad spend. So if it didn't work, we wouldn't be doing it, or we would have to find a way to do it better. But it luckily works for us. It can't be everything though. So we have to diversify where we're acquiring customers. Obviously, email marketing is another big channel that we have been doing and are continuously always just working on growing our list and creating that revenue from our own customer base versus always having to acquire new customers and spend money to do that. The other channels I would say where we're acquiring customers, obviously, in person. If we do these events, whether they be influencer events or even holiday shopping events that sometimes we do, trade shows even, we're always looking to acquire a customer, whether it be a B2B customer or B2C customers through in-person events. And then we also look at, the platforms that we generate revenue from, be it an Amazon, for example, right? It's an indirect customer that will potentially come and find you on your own website, so that now you've acquired a customer through selling through another platform. Same with these gifting platforms. The more places you're in that are helpful, impactful, and revenue generating, for me, is an indirect way to acquire a customer. So we tend to do what works in terms of what's going to generate revenue, what's going to help us acquire customers, and then what are the areas where we do need to spend money to acquire customers. So it's like we bucket them into different areas.
But could you say Meta is like 80% of customer acquisition, more or less?
I would say it's probably about 70 to 80.
Right.
Yes. And we're trying to obviously lower that by continuing to grow our own, list. And also, I don't know if we haven't mentioned it, but TikTok is another great way to put your brand out there, have presence, and maybe we'll cover this, so I'm not going to talk too much about that. But also, any of these channels where you can be visible is a way to indirectly acquire customers.
Yeah, what I
So
can tell you and
organic.
the yeah, what I can tell you and the audience, of course, is that, well, we've been discussing this at length in many episodes, and 2024 it was a little bit, but 2025 it's expected to be the year in which brands achieve the awaited channel diversification,
Mm.
if possible, because they don't want to. Believe me, none of them want to rely on Meta heavily, but they can't. They can't find their next big thing. And with some of these people we interviewed, we have approached this in a very unique way. Let's say what a channel is. Every time we address a channel, we think of Meta, Google, TikTok, but then a channel could be something else. It could be your own app through these platforms out there that allows you to. There are some well-known ones. I don't want to name them, but there are
Mm.
some well-knowns in which you can, with no code at all, build your own app, and the app is not meant to be a copy of your e-commerce website. Let's say it's meant to be, let's say, for a brand like yours in the beauty space, it's meant to be a complement, like the night routine, the morning routine, 5 steps to X result,
Mm-hmm.
mistakes to avoid. For it's educational, it's
Right.
engagement, and of course you can push something else. You can break through the noise through push notifications as well. You can do many crazy stuff, and with the brands, so we have tested that, and so they say as well. But we have tested that ourselves at the agency. Probably 50% of the revenue comes from the app,
Mm.
and some people might say, well, yeah, but probably there's an overlap between the web customers and the app customers. Well, you said it yourself. Today's omnichannel. We want people
Yeah.
to buy where they are at. We don't want them to buy where they can. We want them to buy where they want. So if it's an app and they used to buy on the website, well, they'd rather buy in the app. Welcome.
Right.
Now they can see more content. You are in their phones right now. So that's one thing. The other one, there are some ad networks that are pretty unique that are, and there are some companies, not only one, some companies that have, a network of high level companies. And at the thank you page, they show people an ad to a brand that is related to what they just bought. And the brand that is, in the ad only pays when there's a conversion. So there are plenty of opportunities now.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's talking about app lobbying. It's still in beta, but you need to spend, I think, a minimum of 20K. I don't know if you need to get invited, but app lobbying, is an ad network that shows on games, on mobile games, and all we used to see there were ads of games. Now people see ads of brands on that
Right.
app, and some brands are having an early success, even though it's not at scale and during a long period of time. So I will shut up now, I promise. But the bottom line is that there are plenty of things to explore.
Opportunities. Yeah. Outside of the box opportunities. I agree.
Yeah, and for some other brands, we discuss this with, probably 50% of their traffic and conversions come from organic. 50%.
Yeah.
Now,
That's
that
huge.
requires commitment to content creation. Some
Yeah.
companies we interview here, They have the whole team committed to creating content, even people, the administrative people, not only the marketing people.
Everyone.
They, yeah, they commit to growing, YouTube, to growing TikTok, to growing.
Yeah.
They have a huge, content creation, production, and process, of course. And yeah, they see the benefits. 50% organic, right?
Oh yeah.
I wouldn't say it's the reality for most brands, but I think it's the game to play in 2025 is to think and be creative about, okay, what's the next channel? Is it Amazon? Is it TikTok Shop? Is it YouTube Shopping? What other channel but Meta can we get a steady, stream of revenue from?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's also about diversifying away from Meta, right? Because like you said, things can change, algorithms can change. So it's about investing in creating the content that you can disperse on other platforms so that you can see if something else can be the next big platform, or even if it's not the next big platform, but it's just a platform that allows you to build that organic, percentage of your customer base.
Yeah, and I know we briefly covered this before hitting record, and I know that this is still fresh. So I will only say that, for those listening to this, for watching this, there's the information is super fresh, but there are some new meta policies affecting the health and wellness industry. So again, nobody has certainty on how exactly it will affect brands. But here we have a perfect example of what we've been discussing all along in 2024, which is we live in a rented land, and probably brands will be living in rental land for many years because again, Amazon, like everything is a rental land.
Yep.
But diversifying probably will decrease the risk of losing 80% of revenue, 70% of revenue overnight because this platform changed policy
Yep.
just like this.
Yep. 100%. And I've seen it with other industries and other brands. You can't rely on Meta's algorithm. So you need to find ways, even if that's your biggest channel, you need to find ways to diversify so that you can survive if something changes.
One of the last questions I have for you is, what are your plans for 2025 and how do you typically plan a new year?
So, plans for 2025, we were just talking about diversifying and creating new opportunities with different platforms. So that's definitely something that's on the radar for next year in terms of um, refreshing and growing our presence on the Amazon platform, which obviously we've been there, but we want to do so in a more robust way. TikTok and understanding, although we're there, understanding how we can better create, let's say, content or presence or a strategy, including ads, if that's the right thing for TikTok as that platform continues to grow. Other things for 2025 is creating more partnerships that will fill those gaps in wholesale, and or maybe not, let's say, fill the gaps, but create opportunities when we don't have those surges in consumer shopping behavior, because we know beauty is seasonal. So in the gaps and in those seasonalities, how do we still continue to drive and create revenue, acquire customers through partnerships, right? Whether it be a subscription box or distribution, and even expanding outside of the US is something that we're looking for 2025 with a distributor that we are partnering with. So there's definitely going to be expansion. There's also going to be more product development coming very soon. Again, we're not going to be a brand that's going to have 30 products right now because we're still a small brand and we want to keep our SKUs almost, tight and very, very focused on our niche, which is autophagy, skin detox, cellular detox, etc. And planning, you asked, I really take the last few weeks of the year, so now, to look at what was 2024, what worked, what didn't work. Also, where do I as a founder feel like this company is going? What do we need to focus on? What feels right? What doesn't feel right? And really working around what are our resources when we raise money, when we have more resources, then we can plan differently. But it's almost planning around, what do we have now? What worked? What do we do for the first 6 months of the year? The milestones, the growth we want to have. And then obviously that, changes. So I try not to plan. I plan high level for the year. And then I plan smaller goals for, let's say, quarters, and also leave room for pivots.
Amazing. Yeah, of course. So this was great. A blast. Chatting with you about your challenges, your wins, and your plans for 2025. So before you go, I wanted to ask you, where can people go to learn more about you and Beautology Lab?
Yeah, I had a blast too. Thank you, Brian. This was insightful and a great way to end the year. So, Beautology Lab, you can find us at beautologylab.com. Our Instagram and our TikTok and all of our social platforms are at Beautology Lab. Me, myself, I'm at Karina Moises on Instagram, LinkedIn as well. And you can find me there. Shoot me a message. Email is karina at beautologylab.com. And I'm happy to, talk to any other founders, any partners, and just see where we land for next year.
That's amazing. So for everyone listening to this, if you go to the DTCinsider.com and click on the episode, you will see all the show notes, including the social handles, website, email, and everything else Karina mentioned. Karina, again, it was a pleasure having you here on the pod.
Pleasure
Thank you.
being here.
This episode was brought to you by BSR Digital. We help DTC brands grow through paid ads and email marketing campaigns. If you'd like us to help your business grow, head on over to bsrdigital.com and schedule a call with us.